Hello everyone, my name is Shubham Pandey and today's topic is void and voidable contracts. Introduction. In the vast landscape of Indian legal principle and legislation, contracts are the fundamental building blocks that govern the dynamics of commercial and civil transactions. They establish the terms and conditions under which parties engage in various agreements, whether they involve the sale of goods, provision of services, or exchange of rights. Within this contractual framework, it is essential to distinguish between two critical categories, void and voidable contracts. The distinction forms the cornerstone of contract law in India and plays a pivotal role in upholding the rule of law, protecting the interest of parties, and ensuring fairness in contractual relationships. What is void contract? A void contract, according to the Indian Contract Act 1872, is a contractual agreement that is null and void from the very moment it is formed. These contracts are inherently unenforceable and hold no legal significance. In essence, they are considered non-existent in the eyes of the law. There are specific circumstances under which a contract is deemed void in India. One primary reason for a contract to be categorized as void is its illegality. Contracts that involve illegal activities or are contrary to the established laws and public policy are rendered void. This includes contracts for illegal gambling, trading in prohibited goods, or any agreement that encourages unlawful activities. Additionally, contracts that involve minors or individuals of unsound mind are considered void. Minors lack the legal capacity to enter into binding contract, and contracts with individuals who are mentally incapacitated are void due to the absence of free and informed consent. Contracts with objective that are impossible to perform or those founded on mutual mistakes of fact are also considered void. Essentially, a void contract is like a legal black hole, devoid of any legal rights or obligations for the parties involved. Consequently, the Indian legal system does not recognize or uphold void contracts, and the parties involved must return any benefits or property exchanged under such agreements. Grounds for void contracts. Contracts are deemed void on various grounds, and recognizing these grounds is essential for understanding the dynamics of contractual agreements. These grounds are primarily derived from the Indian Contract Act 1872 and they provide the legal framework to declare a contract as void. Illegality, against public policy, involvement of a minor, unsound mind, impossibility, and lack of free consent. These were some of the grounds for void contracts. Recognizing these grounds for void contract is crucial to ensure the legality un- and enforceability of contractual agreements in India and to protect the rights and interests of all parties involved. Consequences of a void contract. When a contract is declared void, it essentially means that the contract is non existent from the very beginning, as if it never existed in the eyes of the law. Consequently, both parties are released from any legal obligations that might have arisen from the contract. The consequences of a void contract are clear cut and significant. Firstly, any benefits or consideration transferred between the parties must be returned. In the case of void contract, the legal system firmly refuses to uphold or enforce any obligations that may have been created by the contract. This is in accordance with the principle that illegal or fundamentally flawed agreements should not be protected by the courts. Parties entering into a void contract cannot seek remedies or legal recourse based on such an agreement. The rationale behind the concept of void contract is to prevent and discourage activities that are illegal against public policy or involve vulnerable individuals like minors or persons of unsound mind. The law ensures that such contracts are not recognized and any transaction based on them are rendered legally inconsequential. This serves to maintain the integrity of the legal system and protect the interest of individuals and society as a whole. What is voidable contract? A voidable contract is a fundamental concept in Indian contract law representing a critical distinction from void contracts. Unlike void contracts, which are considered null and void from their inception, voidable contracts initially appear to be valid and binding. These contracts are only rendered voidable under specific circumstances which typically revolve around issues of consent and fairness. Voidable contracts often arise due to legal flaws such as misrepresentation, undue influence, fraud, or coercion. In these cases, one party to the contract may have been deceived, pressured, or coerced into the agreement, impairing their ability to exercise free and informed consent. Such circumstances infringe upon the fundamental principle of fairness and equity in contract law. The injured party who has been subjected to these unjust practices has the prerogative to decide whether to validate or void the contract. This means that they hold the power to choose whether to enforce the contract, treating it as a binding agreement, or to void it, thereby rendering it null and void from the date of annulment. The concept of voidable contracts aim to safeguard individuals and businesses from entering into agreement under duress or through deception. It provides an essential legal recourse allowing the injured party to seek justice and rectify the situation while preserving the principle of contractual freedom and fairness within the Indian legal framework. Understanding the nuances of voidable contract is crucial in ensuring that justice prevails in contractual relationships. Grounds for voidable contracts. A voidable contract in the Indian legal context is primarily characterized by its vulnerability to being invalidated or annulled due to specific legal grounds. These grounds serve to protect individuals and entities from entering into agreement under conditions that are potentially unfair, coercive, or deceitful. Here are some of the grounds: misrepresentation, undue influence, fraud, and coercion. These grounds ensure that individuals are not unfairly bound by contracts they did not genuinely consent, and provide legal remedies to rectify situations where parties have been subjected to wrongful practices. Consequences of a voidable contract. In a voidable contract, the injured party retains the legal prerogative to choose whether to affirm or void the contract. This unique characteristic is pivotal in safeguarding the rights and interests of the party facing deception, coercion, or undue influence. When an injured party decides to void a contract, the consequences are twofold. Firstly, the contract retroactively becomes null and void, effectively erasing any legal obligations it imposed. This means that from the date of annulment, both parties are absolved from any performance duties that the contract initially imposed. Secondly, the injured party must communicate their decision to void the contract to the other party, typically in written form. This notice serves as the formal act of voiding the contract and initiates the legal process of nullifying the agreement. Once the contract is voided, the injured party is generally entitled to the return of any property, money, or benefits exchanged under the contract. Protecting parties in contracts. The classification of contract into void and voidable serve a fundamental role in safeguarding the interest and right of parties involved in contractual agreements within the Indian legal system. Void contracts, being interestingly unlawful or impossible, are declared null and void from their inception. This classification protects parties from inadvertently entering into agreements that contravene the law or are unworkable. It prevents individuals or entities from being bound to commitment that could be detrimental or illegal, thereby preserving the integrity of the legal framework. On the other hand, voidable contract offer protection to the parties who may have been coerced, deceived, or subjected to undue influence during the contract formation by providing the injured party with the option to either affirm or void the contract. This classification enables the correction of injustice and ensure that parties do not suffer the consequences of unfair practices. The distinction between void and voidable contracts serve to strike a balance between freedom of contract and the need for legal justice and fairness, ultimately protecting the rights and interests of parties involved in contractual agreement in the Indian legal landscape. Conclusion. In conclusion, comprehending the intricacies of void and voidable contract within the context of Indian laws and legislation is of paramount importance. These legal distinctions serve as the cornerstones of the contractual relationships in the country, ensuring that the justice is upheld and fairness prevails in the realm of business and personal dealings. Understanding the categorization of contracts as void and voidable equips business, individuals, and legal professionals with the knowledge necessary to safeguard their right and interest. A void contract is by its very nature devoid of legal validity and its unenforceability is absolute. This understanding is vital as it prevents parties from being burdened with obligation arising from unlawful or impossible agreement. In a rapidly evolving economic and legal landscape, knowledge of void and voidable contract is instrumental for effective contractual management and dispute resolution. By embracing these legal distinctions, one can engage in contractual obligation with heightened legal acumen, thereby fostering transparency and trust in the Indian legal system. Thank you.